I had been working the night shift at the gas station for about 6 months. It was a quiet job usually, just me, the occasional trucker or insomniac needing fuel, and the hum of the fluorescent lights. I didn't mind the solitude. It gave me time to think, to work on my online classes, to just exist without the pressures of the day. It was around 2 a.m. when he first came in. A tall man wearing a dark hoodie pulled up over his head, despite the warmth of the summer night. I didn't get a good look at his face, but something about his posture, the way he moved, unsettled me. He wandered the aisles for a while, not really seeming to look at anything, before coming up to the counter with a single candy bar. "Just this," he mumbled, his voice low and rough. I rang him up, my hands shaking slightly as I handed him his change. Our fingers brushed, and his skin was cold. So cold. He left without another word. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself I was just tired, that the night was playing tricks on my mind. But then he came back. Every night, always around 2 a.m., always buying a single item. Always cold to the touch. I started to dread those early morning hours, my heart pounding as the clock ticked closer to his usual arrival time. I told myself I should say something, ask him why he was always here, but something held me back. A fear I couldn't quite place. One night, about a week into this routine, he didn't come. The hours crept by. At 2 a.m., just coming and going without a sign of him. I should have been relieved, but instead, a new kind of dread settled in my stomach. Where was he? What was he doing instead? The answer came a few hours later. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, a police car pulled into the lot, lights flashing. 2 officers came in, their faces grim. "Were you working last night?" one of them asked. I nodded, my throat dry. They looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. "There was an incident," the other officer said. "A break-in, a few blocks from here. The homeowner, he didn't make it." My blood ran cold. "What time?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Around 2 a.m., they confirmed. After they left, I sat there staring at the door, waiting, but he never came. He never came again. And I was left with a sickening realization that I had served, night after night, a man who had coldly taken a life. A man who had used my little gas station as some sort of twisted alibi. I quit the next day. I couldn't stand being in that place, couldn't shake the feeling of his cold skin against mine. Sometimes, in the dark hours of the morning, I still wake up, expecting to see him standing there, his face hidden in the shadows, a single candy bar in his hand. I've been working the night shift at this 24-hour gas station for about 6 months now. It's a pretty quiet gig, especially during the week. Mostly just truckers and the occasional insomniac looking for cigarettes or a late-night snack. The pay isn't great, but it's easy work, and I don't mind the solitude. Last Tuesday started off like any other night. I clocked in at 11 p.m., relieving the evening guy, Dave. He looked a little more tired than usual, but I didn't think much of it. "Have a good shift," he mumbled as he handed me the keys and headed out the door. The first few hours were uneventful. I restocked some shelves, cleaned the coffee pot, and rang up a handful of customers. Around 2 a.m., things got weird. I was in the back room grabbing a fresh roll of receipt paper when I heard the bell over the door chime. I walked out to the counter, but there was no one there. I figured maybe someone had just poked their head in and left, so I went back to what I was doing. A few minutes later, it happened again. Chime. No one there. This time, I walked around the aisles, thinking maybe someone was lurking behind the chips or the motor oil. But the store was empty. I checked the parking lot, but there were no cars aside from my own. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just hearing things. But then I noticed something else strange. The security camera feed on the small TV behind the counter kept glitching. The picture would fuzz out for a second, then snap back. It had never done that before. Over the next hour, the door chime went off 3 more times, always when I was in the back. Each time, I ran out to find no one there. The camera kept fritzing too, more frequently now. I was starting to feel really uneasy. At 3:30 a.m., I was standing at the counter trying to focus on a crossword puzzle when I heard a sound from the far end of the store. A kind of thump, like something falling off a shelf. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" No response. I grabbed the baseball bat we keep under the counter and slowly made my way toward the noise. As I turned down the last aisle, I saw it. One of the glass doors of the refrigerated section was shattered, soda and beer spilling out onto the floor. My heart was pounding. There's no way that could have just happened on its own. I spun around, bat raised, but there was no one there. Then, over the sound of my own panicked breathing, I heard something else. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Coming from the stockroom in the back. The stockroom with no other exit. I raced back behind the counter and dialed 911 with shaking hands. I told them someone was in the store, that I needed help. They said they'd send someone right away. For the next 7 minutes, I sat there, gripping that bat, jumping at every noise. The footsteps had stopped, but I could feel it. There was someone else here, watching me, waiting. When the police finally arrived, they searched the whole place. They didn't find anyone, but they did find something in the stockroom. Something that made my blood run cold. In the middle of the floor, arranged neatly, were 3 items. A coil of rope, a hunting knife, and a Polaroid picture. Of me. Standing behind the counter, taken from the back of the store. I quit that job the next day. I don't know who or what was in the store that night. But I do know one thing. It wasn't just my imagination. And it wasn't friendly. It was my 3rd week on the night shift at the 24-hour gas station off Highway 9. The pay wasn't great, but I needed the job to cover rent while I finished up my degree. Most nights were quiet, just the occasional trucker or late-night traveler stopping in for fuel and snacks. But something about that night felt off from the moment I clocked in. Around 2 a.m., the fluorescent lights overhead started flickering. Not unusual for an old station like this, but it cast an eerie strobing effect across the empty aisles. I was stocking cigarettes behind the counter when I heard the door chime. I glanced up to see a woman come in, her face obscured by a hood pulled tight against the rain. She wandered the store for a while, picking up items and putting them back. Every so often, I caught her staring at me from behind the shelves. Maybe she was just zoning out, I told myself. But the way her eyes locked onto mine sent a chill down my spine. After about 20 minutes, she finally came to the counter, a bottle of windshield washer fluid, and a pack of gum in hand. As I scanned her items, I gave the standard, "Find everything okay?" She didn't respond, just kept staring at me with this blank expression. The silence stretched out, broken only by the hum of the coolers in the back. I told her the total, and she handed me a crumpled $10 bill. When I reached out to take it, her ice-cold fingers brushed against my hand. I flinched and dropped the money on the counter. She didn't react, just watched as I fumbled to pick it up and make change. "Have a good night," I mumbled, holding out her bag, but she didn't take it right away. Instead, she leaned in close over the counter. Close enough that I could see the raindrops clinging to her lashes. "Be careful out here all alone," she whispered. "You never know who might come in." Then she grabbed the bag and hurried out into the dark. I tried to shake it off, told myself she was probably just high or mentally unwell, but her words burrowed under my skin. I kept glancing at the door, jumping every time the wind rattled the windows. An hour crept by, then 2. The flickering lights seemed to be getting worse, plunging the store into darkness for seconds at a time. During one long flicker, a flash of movement in the security mirror caught my eye, a figure darting between the aisles. My heart started racing. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" No response. I grabbed the phone, ready to dial 911, then hesitated. It was probably just my eyes playing tricks on me. I didn't want to look paranoid in front of my boss or the cops. Slowly, I set the phone back down and crept out from behind the counter. The aisles were empty. I walked the store, peeking around end caps, my skin prickling with that sense of being watched. As I rounded the corner by the restrooms, I saw it. The door to the women's room was ajar, the lock hanging loose like it had been forced. I knew I should just get out of there, but some morbid curiosity pulled me closer. I pushed open the door with shaking hands. The hinges let out a long, low creak. At first, I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. Red streaks across the cracked mirror. Crimson pooled on the tile floor. The stench of copper thick in the air. A sound made me whip around. Footsteps. Coming from the storeroom in the back. I raced to the front, fumbling with my keys to lock the doors. As I turned back to the register to call for help, my blood turned to ice in my veins. There, on the counter by the phone, sat a pack of gum and a bottle of washer fluid. I worked the night shift at a 24-hour gas station off the highway. It's a pretty quiet gig most of the time, just the occasional trucker or late-night traveler stopping in for fuel and snacks. But there's always been something unsettling about the place after dark. Maybe it's the way the fluorescent lights flicker, or how the shadows seem to stretch a little too long across the empty parking lot. I try not to let it get to me, though. A job's a job, right? Last night started off like any other. I clocked in at 11 p.m., relieving the evening shift guy, who always seems in a rush to get out of there. Can't say I blame him. The first few hours ticked by uneventfully. I restocked some shelves, cleaned the coffee maker, the usual mundane tasks. It was probably around 2 a.m. when the bell above the door jingled. I glanced up from the register to see a woman come in. She looked to be in her mid-30s, wearing a rumpled business suit. Her hair was disheveled, and she had a sort of glazed, distant look in her eyes as she wandered up and down the aisles aimlessly. "Can I help you find something, ma'am?" I called out. She didn't respond, just kept shuffling along, picking up items and putting them back haphazardly. I shrugged and went back to counting cigarette packs. Probably just another exhausted traveler looking to stretch her legs. After a while, I realized I hadn't heard the bell again. I peeked around the corner, but the woman was gone. I checked the bathroom, even poked my head outside. Her car was still there, parked crooked across 2 spaces, but no sign of her. That's when I noticed the back storeroom door was ajar. It's always kept locked, and only employees have the key. A trickle of unease ran through me as I approached it slowly. I pushed it open, fumbling for the light switch with a clammy hand. At first, I didn't see anything out of place among the boxes and crates. Then, a slight movement in the shadows made me freeze. The woman was crouched in the corner behind some shelves, rocking back and forth. She was mumbling something over and over, but I couldn't quite make it out. "Hey, you can't be back here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Her head snapped up at the sound of my voice. In the harsh light, I could see her face was streaked with tears. Her mascara smudged. She looked at me, but her eyes seemed to stare right through me. "They're coming. They're coming for us all, and no one will be spared." Her voice was hoarse, quivering with fear or mania. I couldn't tell which. I took a step back, my heart hammering in my chest. "Who's coming? What are you talking about?" She let out a choked laugh that sounded more like a sob. "You'll see. When they arrive, you'll understand. We're all doomed." Then she lunged to her feet and pushed past me, running out of the storeroom. I stood there, stunned, listening to the bell jingle wildly as she fled out into the night. It took a minute for me to gather myself and lock the door with shaking hands. I spent the rest of my shift jumping at every noise, every flicker of the lights, watching the security cameras obsessively for any sign of her coming back, or for whoever they were. But the night remained still and quiet. When my relief arrived at 7 a.m., I practically sprinted to my car. As I pulled out of the lot, I couldn't help glancing in my rearview mirror. For a second, I thought I saw a figure standing at the edge of the trees across the road, watching me. But when I blinked, they were gone. Just a trick of the shadows and my tired eyes, I told myself. I haven't been back to work since that night. I called in sick today, claiming I had come down with something. But the truth is, I don't know if I can bring myself to set foot in that gas station after dark again. I keep replaying the woman's words in my head, seeing the haunted look in her eyes. Part of me wants to dismiss the whole thing as the ravings of someone unhinged, but another part of me can't shake the feeling that maybe she saw something out there on that dark highway, something I don't want to see for myself. All I know is I'm looking for a new job, one where I don't have to spend my nights alone, listening for the sound of the bell above the door, wondering who or what might come walking in.